All right. Okay. So I'm glad you took the initiative to speak to the head of program, and I'm happy for you that your supervisor was happy to let you go so that you can work on your topic with somebody else. And I'm glad also that I'm able to supervise you, because if I had too many students, then I will not be able to say yes. And I'm also glad that the topic that you have chosen is something that I can manage. So all that said, you have just missed one whole semester. Um, and you have a lot of catching up to do, right? Which I feel that you will be able to, because if you know your topic and you're interested in what you do, you will be able to put it into action. So this next few weeks before semester starts in March, you will be required to do a lot of work, especially when it comes to the writing part of your final year project, right? But for the 5th of February, it's the video that we are preparing for, right? Even the video, it's not like set in stone. If you've got certain things that you are considering on revising in the next semester, you can still do that, right? So we will take it step by step, but you're going to have to do a lot of catching up. All right. So that's it. I want to see what you have prepared.
So I'll begin share screening now.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen, Doctor?
Yes. Can you? Yeah.
Okay. So I will begin. Okay, so for this is my topic: the role of magic in the personal transformation of adolescent character in 21st century fantasy film. I'm looking at the character Kinsey Loke, the one of the main character from the season. This film is actually an adaptation of the comic book series on the same title. So, should I begin with giving an introduction to the film, or should I just go to
Yes.
the past?
Yes.
Okay.
No, everything.
So, all right. Okay. So for the introduction, there's a total of 3 seasons, but I've picked to study season 1 of how Kinsey Loke's character has developed throughout the season through magic. Following the death of their father, Randall Locke, Kinsey, Tyler, and Bodhi, these 3 siblings, along with their mother, moved to their father's ancestral home in Massachusetts. Upon finding that the key house, which is their ancestral home, is filled with magical opening, they embark on a journey to protect those keys from the evil Dodge. Basically, in the ancestral house, there are about 24 keys hidden around the house. Each key possesses a magical quality, and they are both powerful and dangerous. So along the movie, they discover that they have to protect, because the one who actually initially created those keys were their father and his brother, which is their uncle. So basically, they are the true protectors and key holders of the magical keys. So the responsibility falls on them to protect the keys. So while protecting the keys, Kinsey, an introverted, socially anxious teen, faces several challenges and shows development throughout the movie. This girl, Kinsey Loke, is the middle child among the 3 siblings. Initially, she is portrayed as a very socially anxious teen, and she's also kind of outcasted because when I say following the death of their father, uh, his death was not a normal death. They had a very traumatic experience with their death because their father was murdered. before their very own eyes. So that's part of the reason why they choose to move to their ancestral home from where they were previously living. So when they move into this Massachusetts place is also their place of origin, their father's place of origin. So when they move into this place, they are all three are kind of outcasted, but somehow the two other siblings manage. But I chose to focus on Kinsey because she, from initially a very quiet and very disconnected character as seen in the season, she ends up playing a very important and key role. She is one of the main protector of the key, and um, she plays an important role in the whole season. She also, through the magic, she also learns to confront her traumatic experience of her father's death. And because of that, she's able to face her anxiety and her fears that stops her from doing what she likes, from being the person she is for so many years. So that's the introduction to the story. I don't have the thesis statement and methodology now, but I just have
It's
put
all
it
right.
in
It's all
here
right.
to
Yeah.
uh, do it later. So for the past studies, I have about 15 journals that is connected directly and indirectly to my film. So the first one about the identity formation in young adult fiction. The author is Annika van Leeuwen. She studies the relationship between adolescents' personal identity with young adult fantasy fiction. She has said that fantasy emphasizes teenagers' like mindedness, showing the viewer that they can find a community that resembles them. Basically, in young adult fiction, she has said that part of the reason why so many young adults are so attracted, everybody's attracted, most people are attracted to fantasies and all these magical elements, but particularly young adults and adolescents, it's very interesting to them because it creates another not reality in the sense of actual life, but it creates another world for them where they can find relatable characters in maybe let's say in their real life, in their actual life, say that they are a very quiet, shy and introverted person. They're able to see that representation in the movie, and how that character itself can play an important role in their life. They
Right.
don't have to be the side character, but they are the own main character. So that is the reason why fantasy is very popular among adolescent characters. The second is I actually found a research study on the Lock and Key comic book series, which is the original version of the story. Based on the comic book series, the author has used the Jungian archetype theory and have studied the character and symbol archetypes. He has also explored the good versus evil archetype, about the key house manner and the magical keys and the shadow archetype. Another research is about the Jungian character network in character archetype. Jungian archetype for film character analysis. The author also explores about the character influences relations in making up Jungian character archetypes. He talks about the development of the female archetype in Hollywood fantasy films. Okay, so for the next study, literature and film, fantasy across media. In this study, the author identifies a formation at the individual and societal level depends heavily on the literature and media. He also says that young readers use fantasy genre to understand their self. Just like the another previous study have mentioned about the relatability of the characters, he also talks about the same. Teenagers also relate to and identify with many facets of their own identities through the representation of the fantasy characters. It broadens the viewers and readers' perception by questioning their existing belief through the context of fantasy film characters. So they see the development of the development and the quest for self identity and self discovery in the fantasy film, and they use it to view their identity. Uh, so the next journal is on the spaces called The Spaces of Horror in Lock and Key. This author has has identified how, because this film is it is a fantasy film, but it also has some gothic and some psychological thriller kind of elements in it. So he studies the settings of gothic stories and its iconography and symbolic elements in the story. He tells that the use of space construct convey the horror in Lock and Key. He also studies about the symbolism in the narrative of the story and how it affects the plot of the Lock and Key story. Moving on to the role of fictional narrative on adolescent identity formation. This particular study explores the ways in which adolescents' engagement with fictional narrative supports their developmental process of identity and formation. So it talks about how the plot of the fictional narrative itself, the fantasy itself, uh, impacts their process of identifying themselves. It reviews the literature on parasocial relationship and fictional characters and their representation of real life young adults. So, in the portrayal of discourse of violence in fantasy fiction and its impact among adolescent and early teenagers, I picked this journal because in the film, uh, there is a little bit of gothic elements, a little horror. So, in this particular journal, the author has described how that element can influence the viewer's impact, how it impacts the viewers, especially young adults. So he has talked about the effect of short and long-term effects of violence in young adult fictions. He has explored the script and the character choice have a direct influence on the viewer, especially on teenagers. He has also said that young teenagers especially tend to imitate the qualities and lessons learned from the movie, resulting in their own sense of self. So the next study is on the film's transformative potential with gifted adolescent girls. So this doesn't only talk about Lock and Key, it reviews a few examples of fantasy fiction movie that is closely related to adolescent category. So the author have said that talked about the reflective atmosphere through the use and viewing of contemporary and relevant fantasy films. The author has talked about the stages of personal identity called identification, catharsis, insight, and application. He also said that fantasy films influences their emotional lives and offer a safe and therapeutic environment where they feel understood. There are so when we say fantasy films, there are characters who are popular and the ones that people want to be, and there are characters who are very relatable to real life characters, and many young teenagers find comfort in them and it inspires them to a certain level. So the next study is called Sacrifice, Magic, and Age, the Young Adult's Burden, a study of young adult fantasy. So here, the author talks about the use of magic and fantasy elements alongside the development of adolescents, specifically through fantasy. So how magic and fantasy impacts the narrative of young adult fiction. The author talks about how female characters can hold their own next to other fantasy female protagonists. She discovers the theme of sacrifice and magic in young adult fantasy film. The author has also shown the impact of magic in young adults' fantasy plots. So the next study is on the fairy tale socialization through archetypal patterns and symbols. This study is mainly about the archetypal patterns and symbols in the fantasy fiction. The author evaluates how symbols and archetypal patterns are the main causes for embedding patriarchal codes and gender behaviors. So he explores how this he uses this archetype theory to analyze the formation of the characters. He does a comparison of older classic fairy tale stories to their Disney created counterparts. So he shows the comparison through that. And for the next one is literature and identity, examining the role of literature in shaping individual and cultural identities. In this study, the author reflects the complexity of human identity by exposing viewers to multiple viewpoints and representation of fictional experience that helps teenagers to develop a greater knowledge of their own self. He also talks about how adolescents are prompted to consider their own personal development and transformational aspect of their life. So the next study is called the Night of Awakening, Strength and Empowerment in the Young Adult Fiction Genre. Here, they particularly talk about the feminist perspectives on the effects of trauma in young adult fantasy film. I chose this journal because in the film in the film and in the character there are effects of uh, trauma because of Kinsey witnessing her father's murder before her very own eyes, and that is what actually makes her a very socially anxious introverted person, very reserved person to be specific. So that's why I read about this journal. It talks about how the ways in which fantasy impact and influence young adults' mind and perspective, especially on dealing with trauma and uh, the themes related to it. So the next study is on the fragmented identity in young adult fiction, the impact of self conception on personal autonomy. In this particular study, the author talks about the effect of young adult fantasy and science fiction. He tells that the use of protagonists with a broken sense of identity in order to reassert the self identity of the main characters. So, in this study, the author explains how the use of characters with a lost sense of identity or a broken self of identity, and how the journey of that main character going through the quest of understanding their self impacts the impacts the viewer's perception of identity. It explores the theory on the Bildungsroman, which is about the moral and psychological development in young adult fantasy. The second last study here is about the novel to film adaptation analysis of young adult fantasy novel, uh, The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. The studies, the study talks about the way in which film adaptation theory serves the polarization of certain ideologies in this particular novel. He tells that fantasy films and novels are advocates of ideologies, and fantasy film acts as an escape to real life, creating a world of their own for especially for young viewers and readers. So the last study is about the resonance to archetype in media. There's some accounting for this. So in this journal, the author talks about the author explores the reliable measure of archetypal preference using rich culture and media. So basically, in this study, the author talks about how the, the author explores the archetypal theory in culture and in media and films. That's it for the past study. Okay. For since our last since when we first met for the last meeting, I had asked about doctor's opinion on my research objective and research question.
Yeah.
So I know I need to do some changes on it, but I have made some changes. But would you like to
Go
see?
ahead. Go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So for research question, how do the magical elements function within the narrative of the Lock and Key series? Then the second research question is, how do Kinsey Lock's confrontation with magic evolve her personality and individuality in the season? And the third one is, what are the impacts of magic in the character development of Kinsey Lock in the lens of archetypal theory?
Anything else that you want to show me?
That's it.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Well done. I think I get that sense of what it is that you're trying to explore, and thank you for giving me the summary because I'm not familiar with this corpus. Is
Mhm.
it still playing in Netflix?
Uh, yeah, it is still playing in Netflix. It's fairly new. Book, the comic book series was launched between 2008 to 2012, but this particular series is the first season was launched on 2020, so it's fairly very new actually.
Okay, I will try to make time to watch the first season so that I get a sense of what it is that you are interested in. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, with regards to the video that you are having to submit by the 5th, right?
Mhm.
So, in terms of the literature review, my main recommendation of improvement for the video would be if you go to your slide 4 onwards, okay?
Mhm.
My only recommendation for slides 4 till 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until slide 8 is to add citation in the brackets.
Oh,
That
okay.
means that's it. Just
Okay.
just to kind of route the review
Mhm.
to maybe, like, for instance, say the first one, literature and film, fantasy across. No, sorry. Yeah, go back. Go back
Oh,
to slide 4. Yeah. So the first one, identity formation in young adult fiction. Is that taken from only Annika van Leeuwen's article, or is that taking from other references as well?
no, only from her
Okay.
article.
So what I would do if I were you is I would put in brackets
Mm-hmm.
the author's surname and the year. Leeuwen and what year? Okay. Then remove her name in the first line. Just talk about the key points of that article. Okay. Do the same for every one of these articles so that we get a sense of a snapshot of how they pan out. You said that the comic and sorry, the Netflix series is fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this is a new corpus, but it has garnered a lot of interest,
Mm-hmm.
scholarly academic interest, this shows that the relevance of the corpus to popular culture. Okay, so do the same for everyone, and then this would be good if you're able to do it. If you're not able to do it, that's fine. But you see, you've got the 4 panels, right? On the Canva slides,
Yeah.
you've got 4 panels, and each panel you have 3 research. If
Mm-hmm.
you are able to make connection between the 3 research for each panel, that will be even better. So for your past
Okay.
studies, you are identifying the patterns that's emerging within these 3 researchers, so that when you convert this into writing, when you write your chapter 2, that becomes one paragraph. So it's a lot easier for you later, right? So my recommendation is, based on when you were presenting, what I was listening to was patterns. What are patterns that's emerging from these 15 journal articles that you have reviewed? So the two patterns that I saw, based on what you were sharing, was either the research is character driven. That could include, looking at themes of identity crisis, looking at themes of trauma, looking at character growth. So either the research is character driven, or the research is narrative driven. That means the research is focusing on the narrative storytelling. That's when it is archetype based. It is Bildungsroman narrative based. It is looking at escapist narrative, right?
Yeah.
So like Leuven 2019, the discussion appears to be character driven, meaning the research by Leuven 2019 is focusing on the growth of the character, the development of character. Whereas the third research on the second and the third research on your on this particular slide is more narrative driven. So I would position these two in a different slide, and I would bring the researchers that are more character driven into this slide, so that when I'm writing this into a paragraph later in chapter 2, it's easy. So I'm just going to transfer this. The topic sentence will be past research into this, into Lock and Key has been quite extensive, but we can see two key distinct categories. The first is character-driven research. The second is narrative-driven research. For character-driven research, we have research by Leuven 2019 that focuses on identity formation in young adult fiction, For narrative-driven, on the other hand, we have research by focusing on the semiotic representation, looking at Jungian representation within this context. So then I'm citing all these references. Do you understand? Yeah. So if you yourself look at your 15 references and you see, actually, I see 3 patterns, even better, right? So start to look, as a researcher, Navina, that's one of the things that we bring to the table, that you read other people's work and you're looking for the patterns that's emerging, and that's how your literature review becomes impactful. Because you see the patterns, but then you're saying, this part is missing, this other pattern, this part is missing, and that's how my research will add to the 15 that I'm reviewing here. Okay, yeah. So do that for slides 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Add the reference, and if possible, reorganize it with some kind of clarity in terms of the patterns. And the heading, instead of just putting past studies, maybe have the emerging pattern. So if you've got, if it's character-driven research, if it is narrative-driven research, maybe something else is young adult, the genre driven research, looking at the young adult genre. That could be your 3 emerging patterns, So then with regards to your research objectives. Yeah. If you go to slide 9, yeah. Sorry, research question. Yeah, research question. First of all, it's research questions. That's plural. And I'm tempted to recommend to you to look at world building as the focus of your research. Because when you talk about magic elements is just the elements of narrative that is incorporated because it so happened that this genre is fantasy, right? But when you said just now that you're interested to see how Kingsley look is transformed by
The
the
confrontation of the magical elements.
yeah, and how they are the protectors of the key of their ancestral home, and
Yeah.
how that ancestral home contains the various keys for good and bad. To me, that is the world building that is being created by the storyteller,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
think about it from that premise. So use what you all did for critical literacy,
Mm-hmm.
bring the same kind of evaluation and examination,
Mm-hmm.
and look at your research objectives and your research questions from that premise. So,
Okay.
so um, look at world building as a focus of your statement of problem, research questions, and your research objectives. So that would be my recommendation. Because based
Okay.
on the literature review, I don't see anyone exploring world building as a narrative dimension of this
Mm-hmm.
story, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you get to do that. You get to bring that aspect. But because this is a final year research, this is not an assignment, a small assignment. You get to explore world building more in depthly.
Okay.
Okay. So my recommendation is, I would like to see you next Friday morning, same time this like today on the
Mm-hmm.
2nd. And I want to hear what you have explored in terms of the world building
Mm-hmm.
as a potential lens to explore this corpus.
Okay.
Okay,
Understood.
so now we're moving into the conceptual, the theoretical framework.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
and you can use psychoanalytical lens, you can use the Jungian lens, because when we talk about world building at the
Mm-hmm.
theoretical level, these elements of the fantastical world are part of our subconscious mind. There is the elements of the
Mm-hmm.
shadow, the repressed side. If you're bringing in the Jungian
Mm-hmm.
archetypes, right? But you're not looking at it from a Jungian lens perspective. You're not looking at it from a Bildungsroman perspective. You're not looking at it from that narrative archetype driven. You're looking at it from the perspective of storytelling, and
Mm-hmm.
how the world building adds to the way the characters' motivation and traits are propelled
Okay.
forward, specifically Kinsley's character growth. So when you say you want to explore her evolution of personality and individuality, so I'm looking at it as you're interested in character driven. What is her motivation, her character motivation, and
Yeah.
how does this world that she is entering into, that so happen has magical powers, how does
Mm-hmm.
this world uh, develops her motivation even further, develops her personality traits even more, right?
All right.
So you're looking at what is the world building feature of this story, the first
Mm-hmm.
question. And secondly, you're looking at how her character motivation is further developed because of this world building feature. What's
Okay.
the third question again?
Okay. The third one is this.
Yeah. So when we talk about impacts tend to be something that is that you conclude the research with, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily you focus on. So I would say 2 research questions sufficient.
All right. All right.
Yeah. So these 2 research questions, convert them into research objectives. So
Okay.
to examine, to explore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, something like that. So then you got it. So now I'm just waiting to see your theoretical framework, and your methodology. So that will be next Friday. I want to see
Mm-hmm.
what you have progressed. If by any chance you are able to finish it faster and you're like, I want to see you a lot faster than that, can
All right, doctor.
you message me, and
Mm-hmm.
we can organize a meeting.
All right, doctor.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
So one thing you need to add to this video would be your problem, your background of research and your problem statement. So you've got literature review. Now, based
Mm-hmm.
on this literature review, for next Friday, I want to know the thesis statement. Just write me a thesis statement that would be after the overview. You will have a slide for background of research and another slide for statement of problem.
Okay.
So the statement of problem is basically a thesis statement lah. What is the problem that you want to study? Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Then you have your research questions and research objectives. Then you have a slide for theoretical framework and a slide for methodology. Methodology would be textual analysis. You're doing a deconstruction of the narrative. Don't use words like qualitative, quantitative, because ours is textual based.
Okay.
So for next Friday, I want a tentative thesis statement. You know how it was when we wrote
Yeah.
our thesis statement for your final project. So
Yeah.
it will go through a few rounds. Even
Uh-huh.
as you're doing your analysis, you will find that you're going to revise your thesis statement. That's fine.
Okay, doctor.
Okay. Remember, ours is not a hypothesis type research. And so because of that, our thesis statement can constantly grow as our research is being explored, right? But
Okay.
for the 5th
Understood.
of February, for the video, for the purpose of the video, you need to incorporate all these elements.
All right, doctor.
Okay, any question?
Yeah, I just wanna confirm. So, now instead of focusing on magic itself, I'll be looking at world building, and the magic will be part of the world building picture.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
what it
yeah,
is, right?
yeah,
And how
because, yeah, go on.
I'll be looking at how the world building features helps Kinsey Loke's personal transformation, right?
Yeah. Now, when talk about the world building, you may narrow it to specific aspects of the world, you know.
Okay.
Um, Again, like how you did for your critical literacy assignment, you can't cover everything, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
so so now you're going to go in depth in terms
Mm-hmm.
of exploring how does a storyteller creates world, especially fantasy world. What are the do's and don'ts of the creation of a fantasy world building?
Mm-hmm.
Then you will use that as a lens to study this particular corpus, specifically season one, and create that data, and then look at the data and see how Kinsley's character is affected by the world building narrative
Okay.
or the world building structure of the
All
Lock
right.
and Key season one.
Okay, doctor. Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the trope of the key, that is
Mm.
very archetypal. That there
Yeah.
is that the motif of the key. This is in mythology. It's very it's rooted in mythology. Now, Jungian psychoanalysis, may come up with a different representation. What does the key symbolize? Psychology may have a different kind of representation. So if
Mm.
you wanted to look at the symbolic representation of these world building features, that
Mm.
can be something else that you may explore. So for next Friday, I just want to hear what you have to say, because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, you're doing a lot of catching up, because usually that would be like week 7. I would be asking you to do that in week 7, and you have 7 weeks to explore the theoretical aspect of world building. So now you're doing everything like, in 1 week and 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's unrealistic, right? So what I'm suggesting for you is to prepare something roughly for the 5th
Mm-hmm.
of February. Then after that, to explore, to take the semester break to explore further. So when I see you in the first week of semester, then I will get a more comprehensive sense of what exactly you're doing, what's the theoretical lens, whether it's workable, whether I want you to improve on it a little bit, all that. So whatever it is that you're going to share with me next week, keep in mind that this is ongoing. This is not
All
the
right.
final.
All right, doctor.
All right.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question?
No, doctor. That's it.
Okay, good. I think you definitely know what you want to do, and you're also very clear in terms of the corpus and the direction of what you're interested in. Now it's about making it academic. We can't like your critical literacy project. You can't do everything, even if you're interested in that one corpus. You can't do everything. Even world building, you can't cover every aspect, right? So you may find that you may use world building as the main topic, but you're focusing only on Kingsley Loke's character, and because of that, there are certain parts of the world of this story that you're not going to be exploring because
Yep.
it doesn't involve her.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Cool.
Okay, doctor.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop the recording here, and I will share with you the recording once it's rendered.
All right, doctor.
All right. Okay.